to do today is go to ILM. Make it to ILM probably 2 to 3 times a month. My working with visual effects people is I feel it's very artist direct. You have transmissions which are kind of T1 lines, and they can see me, I can see them, but it's still not the same as actually going by each artist's box. It's very important to me. That's where you get a lot of direct communication with the artists, and you cut through the, I guess, you know, the telephone, you know what I'm saying? Where things can get misconstrued. Right now, I kind of put out a 911 call to the studio and ILM, basically saying we are effed. I wrote an email to everybody, all the heads at Paramount, Steven's office, everyone, just so everyone knows. I wrote to all the heads of ILM saying, all my movies, Pearl Harbor, Armageddon, Transformers, Island, whatever, I was able to show the movie this time. And we have sections of the movie you cannot show to an audience because there's nothing there. We've got now 2 months left. So it's just to make them accountable. Now, they're not going to be able to screw the release up because they will get it done. But they've been told since the beginning of the year that they are effed and they don't know how effed they are. All right, but I'm telling them you're effed because I just know we have so much work to do. It's this movie's definitely 3 times harder than the last one.
On the first film, ILM created 420 shots. On this one, we're creating 552. The slightly deceptive thing is that these shots are so much larger.
No one knew what these robots were going to do on the first movie. And no one knew what they were going to look like, and we found that, you know, through the process of doing the first movie. So the second movie, we at least had the comfort of knowing, you know, how we can make these things and what they need to look like to look real on screen. So to a large extent, the second movie was just more.
Everything does start with the script, and certainly the numbers of characters that as we're reading the script, whoa, wait a minute, there's another one, there's another one. A lot of brand new characters are revealed in the script.
We had only, I think, 14 hero robots on the last film, and on this one we had 45. And in total, we had 217 assets to build. So just the volume of work that we were going to have to produce in the time that we had was incredible.
All right, Transformers 2, Revenge of the Fallen. We're just about done with production. It's been about 2 years for a lot of us working on this thing. 350 talented artists contributing to the... Hey, Michael, yeah.
What are you doing?
Just working on putting together a little animation kind of documentary thing that we can show at the wrap party.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Can we actually do work now?
Oh yeah. Let me go ahead and cut this off and get right back to doing what I was doing.
With the new robots in this movie, we just started from scratch to a degree. The technology always advances and our methodology always advances. We revisited the old robots to get them up to speed for this movie.
Even though we've reused a lot of the assets like Optimus and Bumblebee, they came forward from the first film, we found that all of a sudden the camera's looking in new places that we never painted or needed upgrading from the first film. So even our characters from the last film needed a complete makeover when they got into this one.
The transformations we did on this film have become a lot more aggressive than the transformations we did on the first film. And by aggressive, I mean we've tried to keep the robots on the move as they transform rather than driving into frame, stopping, and transforming.
We look at each robot and use the transformation as a way to help define their character. On Jetfire, for instance, Michael pushed us. He said, this is an old man robot, so his transformation has to be really clunky and jerky, and stuff has to not work. And you'll see him, smash his own leg trying to get it to rotate into place, and pieces dropping off of him, and stuff falling out all over the place. Whereas, Devastator is this very violent transformation with all these robots being smashed into each other.
We had the advantage on what we did here at Digital Domain in that we had the smaller robots, and by their very nature they were faster. And Michael said, yeah, these things are quick. We're not going to dwell on their transformations. They're just part of how they move. We had 8 kitchen bots that we were working with, and all of them had to transform.
Even though they're only in a few shots, you can't skimp on them. So you've now got to design, build, model, do every bit of work that you would have to do on any other creature, but they only feature in a few shots. So it can be a little expensive, but I think it sort of pays off.
Michael's camera work in that sequence, he never really wants to play anything to camera. He wants it to seem sort of incidental to camera, like, oh, here goes the camera moving over here, we just picked up one transforming. The sequence was more about putting this little commando group of little nasty Decepticons together than it was dwelling on anything.
Getting those robots to stick, and especially with the challenges of the anamorphic lens, was very, very daunting. And we chased Float a lot in that sequence. The little dick bot, the blender guy, he was slipping around on the stool, and lock him down, and then the router bot on the wall starts slipping around. So then you have to do different tracks for different guys in a lot of cases.
The big challenge was taking these smaller characters and still making them very dynamic and interesting. Wheelie was one of the characters we were most excited about going into Transformers. And Michael was very concerned about Wheelie as well. In fact, he told us he was his favorite character, but early on in the movie, before he'd even established who Wheelie's character was completely. And I think the reason is that Wheelie's he's a torn character. He's torn between the good guy, the bad guy type thing. He doesn't really know who he wants to be.
With this one, he wanted to have hands and to be smaller and cuter, or the eyes to be more complex and have more like the eyelids, the way they worked. He wanted to have more pieces, mechanisms, little things moving inside.
When we first started, Michael was saying, I think he's kind of schizo. That's our first direction. I think he's all over the map. Like one minute he's going to rip your head off, and the next minute he's, I'm sorry kind of thing. We did some tests with that and kind of were developing along that lines. And then he said, no, I think he's more like a little bit of a kind of an I love you character. Like if he was looking at Megan, he'd be going, I love you. So we made him this sweet little character and started plugging that into a couple scenes.
Oh, you're cute. Name's Wheelie. Yeah. Say my name. Say my name.
Finally he said, nope, I've got it. He's like a Joe Pesci little shithead character. And that's where he finally ended up.
Oh, that's my eye, you crazy spit!
The unveiling of Alice to the Pretender, that was something that we hadn't done before. And we had to create some very complicated procedural animation that could integrate to keyframe animation that was now also matched to the real world performance. So that required some development. I loved the concept from the beginning. I remember I got to meet with Michael before we started the show, and he showed me a picture of Alice and say, oh, this is going to be cool, and saw some of the concepts, and then we started getting into it. It's just conceptually a cool thing. You've got a hot chick turns into a badass robot. The tricky thing, of course, for that, though, is integrating those. It's one thing to go from a rigid body object that you can transform in a very mechanical engineering style and end up being a robot. Those sort of things go hand in hand. But here we're starting with an organic creature that has to become this very inorganic, mechanical robot.
And she always had this hair that was like these dreads that were hanging down, which were kind of nice, because when she'd move, you get some nice movement in them. And real late in production, we were looking at the one shot where she transforms, and Michael was looking at the hair and he goes, she's like a Medusa. And once we took that hair and took it from hanging straight down and brought it up and made it part of her personality, the character just came to life.
Michael had said early on in the movie to us that You know, in the first Transformers, he's done the transformations. You know, he really labored those, I think, for all the good reasons. How cool was it? Everything's transforming right in front of your eyes. But there are a couple of examples where it's a unique situation that we wanted to show it off, and I think that was one of them. And the other was Reedman.
Early on, Michael showed us the animatics on the Reedman microcon sequence, and he was in love with it. And he'd mentioned to us in one meeting too, he goes, I showed this animatic to Steven Spielberg the other day, and he gave me a high five. So right then it was, okay, this is a big one for him. You know, we got to knock this one out of the park.
Michael certainly, like all of us, found ways of using special effects to help tell his story. I don't really believe that Michael Bay is so effect-minded that the story is subordinate to the special effects set pieces. Just the opposite, Michael uses special effects to enhance his story.
Michael had set a tone of the behavior of the microcons, and he did this on set. In this particular case, he had a sheet with the ball bearings on it and these big old magnets, and Michael's underneath, you know, moving these things around, and you see that behavior in the shots prior. You see this sort of very staccato, jitterish-like behavior of the ball bearings. So that set the tone for us. We then took that idea and created a character that was this skittish, nervous creature, and you see that in the little pill bugs as they hatch out and they march off to assemble Reedman. But it came from a physical reality of shooting something on set, which is interesting.
So once we get the shot to a point where we feel like it sells the main idea and it's getting across all the main points we want to hit, then we're ready to show it to Bay. You know, his reactions can kind of vary. Sometimes we're a little bit off the mark from what he wants.
Don't you think it's a little fucking weird?
And sometimes we completely nail it.
Getting better.
Our transmissions with Michael are pretty entertaining. We usually have them 3 or 4 times a week.
It puts us right there in the room with him whenever he needs. It's a broadcast that's a live feed between ourselves in San Francisco and Michael in Los Angeles, where we show the work that we're doing and he comments on it.
This is a goat. We were talking about a goat right here.
We have these tablets where you can draw right on the screen, and he can draw and I can draw, Scott Benza can draw, to show what we're thinking the shot should be. If he doesn't like the design of the shot, he'll draw the size of the character, where the movement should be, where we might change the camera. Then we go again, we change it.
You see where you are right now? There's no way to make it counterclock, and we get kind of to this. You can go a little bit far and then come back to us, and we can get ravaged, spend more time of him clawing the face.
Typically, I would say the number of iterations that he sees on a shot would be less than 10, I would say, if we're lucky. Worst case would be something that, you know, goes into the 20 or 30 times that we need to show him.
No. I need to see my Facebook friend. Put him on video.
Make his bigger video.
Guy wants to be my Facebook friend. I do not. KG! Yeah. Are you my Facebook friend?
Yes.
Okay. Have I ever sent you any messages?
No, not yet.
That's because we're not friends, KJ. I'm just kidding, KJ.
Sometimes what we think needs to happen isn't what Michael thinks needs to happen, and he's pretty vocal about it.
Oy.
It's all wrong. We don't know what are you guys doing? I was very clear about this. This doesn't make any sense.
Coming back is weird. We're just wasting time, and it's not getting to the point. You flip the image, it definitely f***s everything up. This Megatron back there is so lame. Now, granted, you didn't spend a lot of time on this, correct?
No.
There's something about him. He just looks like a pinhead. Does anything with Megatron's arm? Does it do anything with a gun? It just sits there. It's just a big ugly claw. Ay. No, I'm just thinking, you guys have a lot of work. A lot of work. Please. I've had a few freakouts on this movie. My one freakout came, and I call the producer at ILM, his Wayne. I said, Wayne, Any director right now would want to blow their effing head off right now, okay? How is this movie ever going to effing get done, okay? Please, I'm going to write you a check for $300,000 from my account to hire more effing people. Anything, just anything to get me out of my misery.
Michael likes to joke with us on the transmissions. He asks about, like the other directors, okay, how many times has so-and-so come up? Well, they've come up 1 or 2 times. He comes up pretty frequently. He's come up pretty much every other week for quite a while.
He's very accessible, which is pretty rare. He'll wander into your office and ask you how it's going and how the shot's progressing that he knows you're working on, you're responsible for, you're supervising. And then, you'll say, well, I'll show you Tuesday, Michael, and you better have a version on Tuesday to show him.
It's cool. Where'd you get this?
Oh, that's from the set.
I know that. I don't know. I just want to know how you stole it. It's okay, it's fair game. You get to keep it. If you stole it, you get it.
We can spend a lot of time second guessing sometimes what something needs to be, and certainly what it needs to be in the final shot of a movie. And Michael is involved with our process to a degree that we can skip some guessing a lot of the time. It's a pretty direct path to the decision maker.
But just take a little moment for the body to...
It's actually pretty encouraging and motivating to hear when he really does like something, or the fact that he is very open to ideas and for us to suggest things. Having him react and interact with us like that is actually part of, I think, what makes the show fun.
Here. It's like a plastic surgeon. Yes. And we're going to do your face like this and this, and then we're going to tuck it here and a little Botox there. Is there a way we can slow the film down just a hair bit, like right there, so you have like a little hang time.
A little more hang time?
Like that, so you can get a little more of the...
The animators do love having him come around. They do really enjoy the attention he gives them, and they do enjoy the show that he puts on.
Michael came up here and he was going around to different artists' desks talking about what he wanted, and I asked him, what do you think the staging for the shot would be? And he goes, here, well, let me show you it. He gets down, he's like, I want Optimus kind of curled up like this, and I kind of want him to roll over like this. Kind of like this, okay? I was kind of taken aback, but I don't really even remember. But later I had to ask Rick what actually Michael did, because I was staring at him going, dude, Michael Bay's in my cube on the ground. That's awesome.
I feel these mountains are really tight on them. You know what I mean? They're right behind them, which makes them look fake, by the way. I don't know. Do these things move away?
One detail of working with Michael on this one that was a new development, I think, both for Michael and for us, was several scenes that we had that were entirely CG. One thing that we discovered that was very difficult was that we had a hard time in CG figuring out how he wanted the cameras to move, and he would kind of get a little frustrated in our transmissions that we couldn't react quickly.
They were having trouble blocking the scene, and I didn't realize that at first. It was just a painstaking approach. The cameras were very mechanical, and what I realized is, God, wait a minute. They're animators, and I'm a director, and I block things every day. And it's like, that's the problem. Here, give me that. They had this little stage that they started. It's wired with infrared. It tracks me wherever I am on a stage, and they put in these crude little models of my different robots, and I was able to compose my shots. Literally, I was able to block the scene in their little room in about a half hour. Literally, I'm just, okay, switch my lens. I had my lens control. They can raise me up on this digital world, and so I'm standing on the floor and I'm moving around like a cameraman. It just circumvented so much, time by me going up and being able to go on a stage like that and block it myself.
Another very difficult sequence was the forest battle. More fighting, not so much dialogue, but it's supposed to be like way up there, like it's an Akira Kurosawa battle scene in a Japanese film of great proportion.
Michael gave us the mandate that these are not going to be big lumbering robots that require a lot of effort to get around. They're agile martial art experts. He had a great team of previs artists down in LA. Took 3 artists like a month to put this together, and we tried to go overboard a little bit with how much fighting was in the previs that we did, so Michael would have a slew of things that he could choose from.
Of course, what's difficult is that we'll do the animatic and it's kind of on a virtual set. And then you get out there onto the real set and this is the space you've got. So you start adjusting and covering plates, and we even shoot virtual backgrounds to make sure that we can still get the shots that Michael wanted to from the animatic, just in case the real space didn't quite work for what we needed.
Michael had always been pretty specific about wanting flaming trees in the background, particulate flaming debris in the air. The robots are massive. They're 40 to 60 feet high, so we need them kicking dirt up at every step. So we had to go out and shoot a lot of that. We also had to do a lot of digimat work or paint work on the ground to have footfalls, scuffs in the ground that the robots leave behind as they fight. So that was a lot of work on our end.
It's pretty fun to work on beating the crap out of Optimus in this movie. I'll kind of take a look at all the punches and hits that they take during a sequence and then sort of come up with the end amount of damage and really just mess them up. And then I'll sort of go back and remove things in each stage, and we try to limit the number of stages because you don't really see everything in every shot. So I think with Optimus we had 4 stages of damage.
So over the course of the sequence, you'll see he acquires more and more damage, and that's done through model, like breaking the glass in his windshields or damaging his face, and then incredible paint work of dirt, streaks, there's grass stuck in his helmet like football players have after they get tackled, just looking at lots of fight reference and figuring out the best elements that we could show to show the progress in the sequence and show that he is getting worn down until its big conclusion.
That's looking good. Okay, I love the grass hanging on it, guys.
Yeah.
Look at that. You gotta put that shit on there.
We ended up doing a ton of simulation on this show because Michael, he requires the highest level of realism that we can give. And that means, when somebody gets hit by, a giant tank round, that part of them would blow up, and he wants to see that. If something splashes into water, he wants to see that. If something blows up, he wants to see real looking smoke. And if we're cutting down trees and smashing trees in the forest, he wants to see those things moving like they really would. We have an aircraft carrier that we had to blow up, that we had to fracture in multiple places. The planes on the deck all individually had to be broken and fractured. The planes had to be able to flip over. There were helicopters.
It's easy to forget that everything in this shot, absolutely everything, had to be accounted for and built and textured and provided to be simulated and lit and dropped into the water.
Once Michael Bay saw the planes and the helicopters, we had to add more. We had to add chains. We had to have people, falling off and trying to hang on to the boat for dear life. You can see that he's having so much fun. He really likes this stuff as much as we do. When Michael came to visit once, we were showing him some of the destruction that we were doing, and Michael kind of laughed and said, "Do you have a team of people doing this kind of stuff all day?" And we said, "Yeah, we have a whole team of people just blowing stuff up." And he said, "If I worked here, I would work on that team."
On the first movie, Optimus was our biggest, most complex model. Our average robot on this movie is about 1.5 times as dense as that. And Devastator is about 7 or 8 times as dense as that.
When I loaded the whole entire creature all at once on my machine and tried to get it over into our proprietary software, my machine actually completely froze and had a total meltdown.
Our computer IT guys came up to look at what had happened. They said that the motherboard was dead, the hard drive had failed, and the memory was fried. So, everybody was a little bit afraid of Devastator at that point because he would devastate your machine.
I want to show you what happens when we try to open a scene that has Devastator saved with all of his high-res pieces on. Eric has been friendly enough to save a scene for us with all the high-res pieces turned on. It took about an hour to save. Okay, ready to send this over to Derek? Yeah, ready. All right. Okay, go for it. All right, let's go. Derek, can you open up GF 170? Now that's a giant fucking robot.
It's about 5 times the amount in Optimus Prime. We think Devastator is the biggest creature that we've ever done at ILM.
What we decided to do was to actually have the rig of the Devastator asset be made up of several other assets, which is actually what it is in the movie. It's made up of different construction vehicles.
When we first showed the original Devastator to Michael, you know, we had been brought to our knees by putting this thing together and putting all this detail and all this extra work into the biggest asset we had ever done. And when Michael saw it, he said, it doesn't look detailed enough. So we were kind of sent back to square one, and we had to go in and add more detail and add more parts. And we basically doubled his size again.
When we found out that that sequence was going to be in IMAX, it got even better because now we had a lot more frame, top and bottom, to work with, so that we didn't always have to kind of fit him into a rectangle. Now we had this huge square.
Every little part of that IMAX frame is the same resolution and the same number of pixels as a normal movie that we would do here. So, you know, when you look at the frame on the left, that's the 2K frame, that's what we normally do. This IMAX frame, it's 4K, it sounds like twice as much. It's really 8 times as much.
It's simplest. You're just seeing more in an IMAX frame, so we get away with less. And every inch of what we put up on the screen has to be accounted for.
Okay, next one.
At ILM, we have a pretty huge render farm, you know, and we can share with the other shows, and other shows recognize when we're about to finish that we, you know, kind of take over the pool. And we have thousands of machines out there. And every night, we completely fill them up with this movie. This movie is just, it's so huge, it's filling up the whole facility.
So this is, right?
Usually we can get a render out overnight. IMAX, it can be 3-4 days.
We looked at one of the shots and figured out that if we took that shot and rendered it on a home PC just once, and normally when we render shots, we render it a few dozen times. If we did that just once, it would take 3 years on a top-of-the-line PC.
Oy, 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 oy.
And that's how it's done. Cut to 2 months later.
Back next week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Oh. Okay. I gotta tell you, the post on this for me was just incredibly, it was a real challenge because it's literally you're trying to take your 5-6 month schedule and extend it to an 8-month schedule by just working more overtime. And you just have to have that face on you that's like, it's gonna get done. My editor told me, it was so daunting, Roger said, Michael, you're not gonna give this movie away, they're gonna take it away. That's exactly what happened.
Director Galloway, what an honor. I'd love to show you around, but you gotta be in the classified access list.
I am now. Presidential order, Major.
I got a message for your classified space buddies. You guys made a mess of it. All right, so this is where we communicate with the JCS.
Just on a action level with
you know, just the military and weapons and vehicles, that alone makes it a huge movie. But you add in all of these robots, and that's a whole nother level of sound design that that goes beyond the traditional. And the fun thing about it is we can just imagine what it might sound like. And if it feels right, then it sticks.
Ethan Van der Rijn, Mike Hopkins, they are gurus at sound, and what I love about them is they use original sounds. They create their own sounds. A lot of these teams get lazy and they just use stock stuff. These guys have millions and millions of sounds that they've created for these 2 movies.
The sounds you hear should reflect their characters. So if it's a bad guy, sound-wise, you should instantly be able to tell that's a bad guy. And then within the bad guys, Megatron, he's, you know, more sort of sharp, blade kind of evil sounds. The Fallen, we've played more organic, like he's got actual organic material, so more sort of crunching sinew and tendons, and his armor is wet. And then the Autobots, the good guys, Optimus is based on air and air movements. Bumblebee is based on buzzes and buzzing sounds. And you know, we experiment trying to come up with sounds for these characters. In the beginning, not knowing at all what we're going to wind up with. For Bumblebee, we did a bunch of recordings with beehives, you know, getting buzzing sounds, and we caught a little fly in a cup and got him buzzing around and make motors out of that. And as the film goes on, you know, it evolves and we try other things, and you know, we stop trying new things when we have to ship it, which is tomorrow. So it's been an evolution.
One of the sound effects editors, Eric, literally he's got millions of sounds, and we ask for certain sounds, and he just goes on his box. He's the guy that should get all the money, let me tell you, because he knows where all those sounds are hidden.
You can see here's all of our robot material for this reel of the movie. Then over here we have our hard effects, which in this scene, with all the robots, we kind of have some blank material here. There's not as much, but... Essentially, we have 23 pre-dubs, and one pre-dub is a 5.1 surround sound mix of a certain food group of sounds. So some of those will be vehicles, some of those will be explosions, some of those will be guns, and then we have a group of pre-dubs that are completely devoted to robots. The reason we keep those food groups separate is so we've got control. So in a scene like this, we'll want to play up the big hits more than the motors, because that's what gives the big power for the scene.
Next.
539.
539.
Channels 5 through 19.
5 through 19.
Yeah, man.
Wow. A pre-dub could have anywhere from 10 to 30 tracks, for a pre-dub. On the final mix, I'm dealing with 256 faders. It's multi-layered, so basically what you're seeing is this is one console. I hit this button and it's a whole other console. I hit another button and it's another console. So it's basically 4 of what you see.
You'll hear the way we've sort of created the sounds is we're making rhythms. And somehow subconsciously it feels more real too. When your mind hears a rhythm, it feels natural. So we spend a lot of time getting things to line up just right and create a ka-tung or a bum-bum-bum. If we were to go and cut every little detail you'd see, it would be a wall of noise. It would just be mud. But the animators kind of design it so your eye goes to a certain thing, and we try to pick that out and highlight that. Let's try this. Give that a shot.
Eric's been cutting new things we see. He's cutting, and we have to, implement that into the mix. And it's what is called my effect sweetener stem is busier than most effect stems in most movies. I mean, there's that much material being flown in during the final mix.
Sam, where are you? You're so weak.
Michael does get a kick out of knowing that he drove it as hard as humanly possible. And
is that the best you can do?
Is that the best you can do? Is that as good as it gets? I mean,
and he
come
won't
on.
even ask that just because he doesn't, if he doesn't like something. That's not what it is. It's out of curiosity, like, hey, what else can they do? Is that the best you can do?
We are going to some digital center that they set up with my Company 3. Company 3 is where I've done my telecity. And he has a satellite office out here. And they've set up some special high fiber cable line, I'm not sure, so that I can actually check my last couple visual effect shots from ILM.
Hey, all right. Great, this is Michael.
Look at this. Say hi to the camera.
Whoa. Michael.
Hi, Michael. Nice to meet you. Richard Roddy from Company 3.
How you doing? Down here on the right.
Stefan's on video. Stefan.
Yo.
Where are you?
Here, look here. Who's that good-looking guy right there?
Here's my colorist over here. Where can you see me?
Yeah, I'm gonna look around for you. Hang on. I can move the cameras.
All right. Well,
hang on.
This one over here, Michael.
Is this one?
No, this one right here on top.
No, I'll do it. Here, I'm moving it right now.
No, this
Oh, there you are.
There you are. Japan, baby.
Oh.
All right, so let's get serious here. Have you tried to darken that slightly?
Yeah, I have a window on there, actually. I'll show you.
What do you think the way to get, wow, I can see your windows. That's very cool. You can color live?
Yeah, we're coloring live. It's 2-second delay. That's it.
Oh, my God.
You should get this at your house.
Oh, my God.
You're going to have this for ILM on your next movie, so you can see it in the theater, at your theater.
Oh, my God.
We're going to set you up with that.
Yeah? Free of charge? All right, freeze on his face. They did a good job, didn't they? Can you see where I'm pointing?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Put a window over here. Just. What we do is we darken select areas of the robots, so it just deepens it, makes it less CG. We use these windows right here, where we can pinpoint certain areas, and it'll track it. It'll be like a. It's a secret recipe. Right there, you see how he's bright for 2 frames or so?
Yeah.
Why didn't you catch that, Stefan?
I don't know.
You suck. That's why. I've known Stefan. How long have we been working together, Stefan?
Since your first video.
I know. How many years is that? 20?
We don't want to say, do we?
17? 17 years.
Yeah.
Now they better have done this. This is a shot I'm wondering. Ugh, what is going on? First of all, the clouds are too defocused for one, alright?
Right.
Alright, it just falls that way.
Right.
Alright? They need to be... They're just not they're not matching in their blueness and whatever. They're just too dark in this thing.
Right.
How fast can they get going on this? I got a world premiere tonight I gotta go to. So can we hurry up and finish the movie so we can go to the world premiere? Which is in about 2 hours. It was a little crazy. I mean, when I was in Japan, we were still finishing some final shots that were coming in as they premiered the movie the night of, and I've never done that. It's crazy. It's asinine. But there was just so much work to do. You've got to do a lot of coloring on these robots. These robots don't just magically show up, and you got to tweak the colors of the robots to the background and to try to fit it into the level of the highlight of the scene, you know, or the highlights on the actor's face. It's painstaking. What time is it?
Have a good premiere.
Yeah. Hey, Michael. Yeah.
Hang on.
Hang on 1 sec.
The owner of this place wants to take a picture with you. Cool with that?
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you, guys. Right here. Thanks,
right,
guys.
Man.
Thank you, Steph. See you,
All
Steph.
right,
See you, man.
fun.
Thank you.
We want to take one quick picture if we could.
Thank you. Thank you. See you.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, guys.
Take care. Take care.
オープニング、もしかしたら何か衝撃的なことが起きる。
Here we go! Here we go! Here we go!
Nothing's healthy when you're talking about Hollywood movies nowadays. Yes, it would be luxurious. Yes, we have 3 years to make this movie, but it doesn't happen. It's not real world. There's a date that's set, and you have to deal with it. The movie's gonna come out, and you know, the studio's like, we'd love to release in England early. We'd love to release in Japan a week early. And I'm like, I don't think physically it'll happen. So, granted, the world got different cuts of them as they premiered the movie.
Oh, it's quite surreal. It's really amazing to be here. It's an honor. There's a lot of Japanese fans out here today.
I know, I wasn't expecting this.
So many fans of Transformers. How do
It's amazing.
Orgasm! Megan, you're awesome! You're like the hottest thing alive!
It's the most kick-ass action movie ever made. Anybody that enjoyed the last one will definitely enjoy this one.
Hi, London. How are you?
The take on the reaction to the film, well, I don't read the internet anymore, and I don't read critics. I was told they weren't nice. When I was vacationing down in Florida, many moms and dads came to me with the word, F those critics, screw those critics. These are nice people, and they're saying swear words while they're then talking about a critic. They're angry at them, critics, because they were being spoken down to. You shouldn't enjoy a fun movie. You shouldn't enjoy this. Word of mouth travels around the world in a very fast clip. If this movie was really as bad as they wrote about, then this would never made $600 million, ever, 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 because word of mouth would have killed it. Word of mouth is like, I've had people consistently come up. I've seen it 4, 5 times. My son has now seen it 7 times. I'm not comparing this movie to Star Wars in any way, but I'm talking about the feeling that I had when I was a kid. Star Wars was like, I owned it, you know? That was like my thing, my world. And I run into tons of these little kids, and this is their world. They can own it now, you know? And Bumblebee's the most famous car in the world. I think these critics were born with the anti-fun gene. They're missing what audiences really want, you know? This is simple, fun entertainment, and as Steven says, it's like a new film genre. Now, I didn't understand what he meant by this is a brand new film genre. He says, well, it hasn't been done before. They've never used robots like this as characters, and That's true, but I said it's not necessarily a new genre. I said to him, this is like an homage to E.T. The charm of the movie is these kids have a secret. They've got a secret alien, and that's the fun of the movie. It's a fun ride, you know? So, and the movie's been accessible to the world because through the comedy and I think the spirit of it. Hi, I'm Michael Bay. We're going to take you on a little trip on the final days of Transformers to Tokyo, where we premiered the movie while I was still finishing the movie. It's one of the stranger days in film for me, so should be fun. Look at this, look at this, look at this. It's it's crazy. It's wall-to-wall city, you know? Let's do our Lost in Translation movie right now. Japan right now. Trip out there to see these guys. But I just got to Japan last night. I think I'm finishing the movie right before the premiere. I'm going to go to a digital studio to put in the last effect shots.
All right, come on, man.
They're all waiting for me. It's very, you got to be very prompt in Japan. You got to see this movie.
Mary. Hi, nice to meet you, sir.
All right, how you doing?
Welcome back to Japan. Your first interviewer speaks English.
Oh, really? That's a treat.
What is the highlight in this one that you didn't have in the first one?
I think what's distinctively different in this movie is the animation level. In terms of the characters of the robots, it's just far superior to the last one. Tokyo, I had to speak about the movie for the first time to a group of press, and even though the movie was still unfinished, I had to pretend with an air of confidence that it was all finished, but it really wasn't.
And this is a question we ask everybody. It's nothing to do with the movie, but if you have a collection at home, if you collect something?
Collect photographs. Yeah, old photography.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to our viewers,
What kind of collection do you think I had? Doll collection?
No.
Jet lag. It hits. You start to lose your focus. It is like Lost in Translation, right? How are you?
Yoroshiku. もし撮影できるとしたら、どこで撮りたいとか、どういうものを撮りたいとか。
何度もされてるそうなんですけれども、それは特に日本の文化のことをおっしゃったんですけど、
男の子の映画で記念された。あとピラミッドなんですけど、それでおかげさまで許可を得ることができました。
Please, これは His name is サタボー、our mascot.
Yes.
Please transform to サタボー。
じゃあかぶりますって。
ありがとうございます。
それでよろしいですか？
ちょっと
You want me to put this on?
これつけてほしいんでしょ？
ありがとうございます。鳥のキャラクターなんですけど、ちょっと彼になってみて、ちょっと
これでいいですか？私だってこのままで。
It's so funny because with the jet lag, you go waves of waves on it.
In Japan, the release date is very close by with the Terminator 4. Are you concerned?
No, Terminator didn't work in America.
アメリカではヒットしなかったからそんなに。
Have you seen it?
He thought that was kind of mimicking, copying Transformers.
Really? Why? Because they had 50-foot tall robots in theirs? All right. Well, my robots could kick the ass out of his robots.
僕のトランスフォーマーの方が強いとして T ポイント出てる。
あれはもちろん。写真撮影で。
Could I order like a tuna fish sandwich or or a hamburger, cheeseburger?
Is that what you like?
Would you like a cheeseburger? You want some?
Cheeseburger, all right. Yes.
Junket. So the first country, it's fine. Second country, a little worse. It just gets worse and more dreadful as you go. But I'm excited to go to Russia. Never been. I'm gonna ditch the American junket. They don't know that. Because I want to look around Moscow. But I figure I've done my part for the studio. Yesterday is when I wrapped the movie I wrapped sound on Friday night, and yesterday about 12:17 exactly, because I was late for the plane. I finalized the color for the movie, and then in that session I had just like, I think we were dressing, I think 7-8 shots. The way ILM can turn the shots around fast is it's like towards the end they do the pile on, where I'm telling you, a week ago we had a conference call, I think at 11:40 at night, and they had like 25 people in the room. At that time they were doing 24-hour shifts. They were having a night crew, day crew, and they'd render stuff in Singapore as well. They would literally assign like 20 people per shot. So, you know, people are working on the lighting, the elements, the dust, all the stuff you put, you know, you're putting into these shots. Normally, shots like this would take months. Because of the pile-on theory, they were able to put so much labor into each shot that they rapidly changed in a matter of days. There are not a lot of houses that can do that, and it's the sheer firepower they have at ILM. Okay, we got it? Megan, yeah, go out there by yourself.
No.
Megan.
Like the movie? It's a pleasure being here. It was very nice to have the world premiere here. This Transformers was embedded here. Are you going to be able to translate all this? Oh, simulcast.
Yes.
How do we do that? Michael Bay, every time something's funny or slightly giggles, he'll pounce on you. Go, why? Why is that funny? Why is that funny? Why are you laughing at that? What about that was funny? Why? It's the point where it's not funny anymore. Why it's funny, and you've gone from it being funny to like, whoa, hold on a second, now we're in a situation. Let me tell you how Transformers 3 will go. We open in his bedroom, he's dead. Thanks, you don't care.
ですね、監督の皆さんにお聞きしたいんですけども、昨日見させていただきまして。
Megan Fox. Johnny Depp's wife.
Johnny Depp.
$5 a pop. You got $5, huh? You got $5? And then, this guy got cash?
These premieres are crazy. It's just 500, 600 people out there, 700, I don't know. A lot of screaming fans, and I did have the opportunity, first time in my life, some woman gave me her bra to sign. That's never happened to me. hope that wasn't caught on video.
トランスフォーマーリベンジ。さて、スティーブン・スピルバーグ制作総指揮、そしてマイケル・ベイ監督ががっつり。
He says my name better than an American. It's got that like. You think it's gonna turn into a big bumblebee?
攻撃を受けているんです皆さん今。
Japan, it's great to be here at the world premiere, Transformers. All right? Transformers started in Japan, so it's only appropriate that you guys are the first in the world to see it.
There was a great moment when Mr. Sato, who's 85, the inventor of Transformers, and it was very emotional for him, and he passed me a letter, and it was basically like him handing the torch to me. And he wrote down the things, what is the morals of Transformers? And through broken English I'm hearing, through the interpreter, it's about giving parental figures to kids and teaching kids certain values on giving of oneself and sacrifice. It was a very sweet moment.
はい、トランスフォーマー25周年を記念したモニュメント、そしてそれでは、マイケル・ベイ、お送りください。
Want to know the bottom line why they do these things? What bottom line? They get it in the press and they get coverage on it, and the Megan Fox dress. It was always about the Megan Fox dress. What is she wearing? All right, this woman that I cast in my office from nothing. The world is now obsessed with what Megan Fox is wearing. So it was a different dress every day, and she was so sweet. She goes, I think I have to give it all back to the designers. I'm like, no, you don't. You've just made them famous around the world. Wait, I've signed way too many autographs for you. See, I remember you.
Oh, you can't get that for me.
Thinks he's an imposter. She's making money off my autographs. We have a little Korea issue. Our drives are not loading up in Korea. Am I stressed? No. Do I care? What are we gonna do? Nothing. Just be zen about it. All right, so you feel like a TMZ guy. Come on, we gotta... Well, I hope you guys enjoyed Tokyo. You didn't get to go with me to the KGB when I was in Russia. Now, that was quite interesting. That was a fun day, all right? The only reason why I got to go to the KGB is because the number 2 in charge of the KGB, who said only 10 Americans have ever been in this building in 30 years, he said, I'm a fan of your movies and I'm a fan of Transformers. Boy, Transformers has opened a lot of doors.
There's a couple reasons why I think Transformers has been able to stay relevant for 25 years. The first is its ability to constantly reinvent itself to be relevant to the kids of that age. The fact that we have reinvented our characters so many times over time, I think it almost becomes exciting to see what Optimus Prime is going to look like in the next iteration.
We don't want to give them the same thing twice. We want them to recognize their heroes and their characters, and clearly Optimus Prime is Optimus Prime, and Bumblebee, and Starscream, and Megatron. You know, you have to have certain elements that are kind of iconic and that continue forward so that people can recognize characters, especially young people who aren't as familiar with all the different iterations of Optimus Prime over the many years. But having said that, you also want to reinvent it. because people want to see those characters take on all kinds of different shapes and looks and be able to have and possess different powers.
The other part of it is the passion of the fans, is that that really helped kind of bridge the two worlds together when the first movie came out, as you had all these new kids that were getting into the brand for the first time because of the impact that the movie had and the ability to showcase the story on this massive scale. But it also crossed generations, where you had, you know, adults that possibly had kids that were getting back into Transformers again for the first time because they were going back and reliving their childhoods all over again and seeing the magic of what they saw in a cartoon and a toy line in the 80s, seeing that brought to life again.
So we want to take advantage of that evolution that's happening in this film and put that in the toy line, and put that in the product line, and put that in the video game, so that people can go play right along with that as they're enjoying whatever tangible amusements they're playing with based on the movie.
The one thing that does set Hasbro apart from a lot of other companies is the passion of its employees. We typically bring in people that have a general interest in the things that we produce as a company, and it shows in the workmanship that we have in our product. It shows in our marketing. A lot of the team members have been around on the Transformers brand for 5+ years, and so we've all been there, you know, before the movie, and we're here after the movie as well to help steer that ship and keep that consistency going.
There's not too many opportunities in the toy industry, particularly, that you get to work on something that meant something to you as a child. There's not too many brands that have that length, and because Hasbro is in the creation seat as well as the product design seat, we have to think about it logically and passionately so that it's around in another 25 years.
The 25th anniversary of Transformers is a really big deal for us, especially from a personal standpoint. Most of the designers on the team are of the age where we grew up with this. You know, we're the same age as the fans that are out there now. It's really special to be a part of it now, 25 years later, after growing up with playing with these same characters and same toys.
If he said something like, you know, no one can beat Starscream, and then he said it again in like jet mode, it would make sense, you know?
Oh, that's great.
I'm amazed every day when I see what we do, and when we get the first models that come in. It still blows me away today when I see the first gray model of any new Transformers toy that we do, of just the technical expertise that goes into making a toy like that.
I don't know if you've actually ever tried to unfold one of those things. It's just quite hard, and only kids can figure it out.
They're puzzles, and they can be very complex puzzles or very easy puzzles. The challenge with the movie designs clearly makes them complex puzzles. However, we work with a great partner in Takara Tomy, and have for 25+ years. They bring a great skill set, and the designers here bring a great visual skill set along with the knowledge of how to move parts. We make it work.
When we take a look at the challenges that laid ahead of us when we first did the product for the first movie, we looked around at each other saying, how are we going to do this? How do we make that robot look like that vehicle? And you look at the first movie line and it looks tremendous. Then we see the same character done for movie 2, and it looks, you know, twice as good because of how well they were able to take the learnings of what happened with the first toy and turn that into the next version. I think one of the easiest ones to take a look at is our Optimus Prime toy from our leader assortment, which is one of our bigger toys. That the first one I thought was tremendous, and now the movie 2 version is like, it feels like it's light years ahead of the first one just because of how they continued to really better themselves every single time out.
You know, at first we would joke around that the filmmakers had at their advantage the movie magic, and that, you know, for us it was the mechanical transformations actually had to all work, that the volume of a robot had to be that same volume of course, the car at the very end. But in fact, if you look at the first movie and then you look at where Michael's taken it in the second movie, he stays very true to the volumetric of the sort of what the character is.
They give me a huge license on creating all sorts of characters, from the wheelie character to the reed man to the little bugs. So it's really fun for our creative team, my robot designers, to, you know, have fun and create Transformer robots.
There's an iconic look of what they are because you still see a lot of the car parts in their robot modes, and that's what helps you identify that it's a Transformer. So all the parts that are on the exterior in the car mode or the jet mode, they have to go somewhere. And so I think we were able to get to a really good place where the studio did a great job of really bringing the characters to life and finding that way of how do you make a magical conversion on screen that has all the complexity that it has, and then have that allow Hasbro to be able to still make a magical toy that still replicates a lot of the great transformation that you do see in the movie.
So this next new toy line for Revenge of the Fallen has all of those specific elements. You see all the gears turning and all the things happening. So as this character is unfolding, you're really seeing that transformation.
I feel like we have a really good relationship with the Transformers fans. Every year, we have our annual Transformers convention called BotCon. We usually get, between 2,000 and 4,000 or 5,000 people that show up to the convention every year. And this is our chance to talk face to face with our fans, is really just interact on a personal level with truly the people that care the most about the brand outside of Hasbro.
Whether it's at BotCon or whether it's online or whether it's at Comic-Con, I can't say enough about, the time and attention our team spends in hearing from the fans and wanting to please the fans. Because really, if you think about it, we are so grateful to them. They have stuck with this brand, through the really good moves we've made probably over time and some of the moves that they probably characterize as bad moves. We don't always get it right, but we always try to get it right.
I think that we've been able to really reach out to the fan audience and engage them in a way that we do get their feedback and we listen to where they would like to see the brand go. We clearly can't do everything that every fan would like to see, but we definitely listen to kind of where the general trends are going and try to give them what they want.
We're continuously checking the boards, the Transformers forums on the different various websites, just to get kind of the read of what they're thinking, what they like, don't like. More often, hopefully, what they like than anything.
They definitely are kind of the underground heartbeat of the brand. These are the guys that really kept the brand relevant in a pop culture way when the brand wasn't as big as it is today and when it wasn't as big as it was in the 80s. And so I think in many respects, what the movie has really done is kind of put them on the map, because everyone knows Star Wars and everyone knows Star Trek and some of these other properties that have a little bit longer of a heritage than Transformers does. And now that we've had our live action movie, it kind of, it was legitimization of who they are and that the passion that they have for this brand.
When we thought about this, and everyone, the team at Hasbro, myself included, what I wanted to be able to do here was to use the films to contemporize the brand and treat the brand in a whole new way, respecting kind of the core mythology. Don't break the basic rules of the brand. Because if we can keep the basic rules of the brand intact, then this can go on forever. Because more than meets the eye is not that different than what your mom would tell you when you're a little kid, don't judge a book by its cover. So it's this basic kind of core universal truth that then can be explored in so many ways. And what I really appreciate is that the filmmakers equally appreciate that. And that if you keep some of the basic rules of engagement around Transformers intact, you can then become even more contemporary. You can do even more dramatic things with the story because you have that underpinning that helps to hold it all together.
Right now we're going to talk to you about Previs, which is a very, very important tool to me. This is where I get to start making the movie 18 months before I actually physically make the movie. And this is my time to experiment, where we build the artificial world. I work with my lead guy, Steve Yamamoto. We build our characters in a crude form and then finally watch it come to reality.
Hi, my name is Steve Yamamoto. I'm the pre-visualization supervisor on Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. This scene here is the introduction of the Fallen, who's the main reason why the Autobots and the Decepticons split. His face is supposed to be the icon of the Decepticons. When the Fallen sees the humans, he thinks that they're insects. The Fallen has created this machine called the Harvester, which essentially would kill our son. This sequence was animated primarily by Chris Williams, Rob Dressel, and Kyle Robinson. We created about 55 minutes of material for about 50 separate sequences. The first bad guy or Decepticon comes right here. Michael didn't want to see the transformation yet, so we hid him behind all these giant concrete pipes. And then all war breaks loose here. This sequence contains what I think is the best shot in all of previs, which is the shot where Wheelbot comes through the 4-lane concrete overpass and Optimus jumps on top of him. This shot really set up the rest of the movie and the scale of the movie and what this movie was going to be above and beyond the first movie. One thing about showing shots of that scale, you really need a lot of objects that the audience can relate to, such as the cars and Optimus, to give it that scale reference. From the very beginning, Michael wanted to introduce a bunch of different robots with a lot of different capabilities and styles and forms to them. This one was unique in that we had these motorcycle girls as one-legged characters, much like inline skaters or skateboarders. This character, I like the way he transforms because it's very smooth. This combination motorcycle never made it into the movie. And again, here's another one, another character with a different form, which is modeled off of actually a roller derby character, very tough and mean. This action here where he jumps over and throws the blade and splits the car in half was done by an ILM animator as a test originally. This sequence is an example of what I call one of Michael's signature shots. For the sequence, it's the hero's entrance or introduction, where we go around him a few times. It's very similar to the one in the first Transformers movie where the camera revolves around him or orbits around him. I think in this case, we should have cut right about here because you can never actually shoot that shot. This scene was one of the first ones that I animated, and it wasn't so hard that it was a complicated scene, but we do have 10 transforming robots within the scene. And it usually takes about 2 weeks to create a fully transformable robot. There are a couple of cases where you'll see where we faked it, like that guy who was the disposal. You don't see him transform. One of the shots or moments, again, little character moments that we inserted that I really liked. Here was one part where the microwave bot destroys one of these guys. Here's kind of a little bit that I kind of liked, where the leader of the kitchen bots felt the water hit his head, and he goes to get his troops to go find out what's up there or who's up there. The other thing that kind of made this really challenging is that since it was one of the first scenes that we had animated to, we didn't have any designs from the art department of the characters, so we had to build them all ourselves. And here's Bumblebee's disproportionate response, blowing up the house. Another little character bit of animation that I liked in this scene was right here where Bumblebee thinks he has done a really good job in killing all the Decepticons, but he's been reprimanded and like a kid who feels a little misunderstood, kind of walks away dejectedly. In this sequence, we had a number of Decepticons who are nothing like any of the other robots in the first movie. This first one, who's called Ravage, here he comes out. He first turns into a fish, and then he turns into this jaguar-ish character, presumably to infiltrate the military base. And then we have these microbots, or what we call ball bots or sphere bots, which basically look like a lot of little BBs or ball bearings. And that's how they infiltrate into the vault itself through the electronics and ventilation conduits. This is one of my favorite shots in the movie. It was also one of our most technically difficult shots. My animator, Chris Williams, animated all those little BBs or spheres, and then started this whole process, which is where the ball bots create this really, really, really thin character whom we called the reed bot or thin man. And the whole premise of this character was that he was so thin that he could hide in plain sight by simply lining himself up to you. We tried to show that his ability to do that by revolving around and around and around him. And my animator, Rob Dressel, did this scene. And I think it's very clear in our animatic that when he does line himself up, it's impossible to see him, but we do kind of go around him quite a bit. Here's the Docbot at the bottom and he finds the shard there. I hope it's clear that that's the same Dr. Bot that basically examines Sam later in the movie. This scene reunites Sam and Michaela with Starscream and Megatron. In this scene, we have Megatron just kind of standing in this little pit. I think he did it much better in the actual film, where he kind of rises ominously in the background behind Michaela. At the time, we called him the Dr. Bot or Doc Bot. He's one of my favorites. Michael wanted this character to have a lot of expression, especially in his hands here. So he had this little kind of evil rubbing of his hands and kind of, he'd snap his fingers to get people's attention and command them that way. So we took a little more time with the animation of this character, and I think it paid off for us. One of the other things that's kind of interesting about this is that since the character is so small, about 1.5 feet in size, our cameras are really tight here for most of the scene, which is actually great because it's similar to Sam's perspective of this Docbot examining his head. Just as important, especially in this movie, is that it allowed the director, the actors, and the camera crew something to reference while shooting the film, because the characters weren't there during the shooting. It was all going to be put in later in visual effects. when Bumblebee and Optimus come in, we have a nice contrast of shots. Now we're wide and we have much more heroic camera movements in here. It's just a nice contrast to the real close-up stuff of DocBot. This scene is what we call the forest fight, or the fight between Optimus and Megatron. And I know it was something that a lot of the fans wanted to see in this movie after the first one, was just an all-out head-to-head battle between Optimus and Megatron.